Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. We air every Friday at noon, and we're excited about all the feedback that we've been getting. It's amazing to have different topics covering a wide variety of either addictions or modalities for therapy, or what each person is doing about their own recovery or healing from their own codependency or PTSD. And we love interviewing people who are doing things in our society that are helping a myriad of people. Like we're very much passionate about what we do at the meeting space and the recovery store and on the show. And so whenever there's anybody that's really super passionate about spreading the healing message across the globe, it lights us up. And so today we get to interview some people who have really made a huge difference in our society and in the lives of adolescents needing to have recovery or tools from drug addiction. And so today we are joined here with Tay Singer, of course, who I've introduced many times.
Well, and I did my show.
And she just did a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's that too. And then we're also here with Joe Engel, who has 29 years sober. But when he was 17 years sober, his son died of a heroin overdose. And because of that struggle with his son, he created No Hero in Heroin, or Tin High, in 2013, right?
Correct.
Okay. When this focuses on adolescents needing help, and then he also co-created Mission High School and the Alternative Peer Groups, or APG, in 2017.
Yes,
right?
that's
Okay.
correct.
And now they offer even clinical outpatient as well as of last year. And we're also joined with Krista Hales, who is a doctor now of behavioral health, and she has also been a licensed alcohol and drug counselor for 15 years, right?
Correct.
And her interest in that stemmed from her own experience with two family members that she had who committed suicide. Her grandmother when she was 25, and her uncle when she was 20. And so here we have two people, one who's been in long-term recovery and then had the experience of losing his son to addiction, and someone who has experienced suicide in their own family and the trauma that that brings up. And I often find that people who have gone through great pain can turn it around and offer great healing in this world, because we're uniquely qualified to understand where a person is and what they need, and have the passion to want to help. So welcome. So thank you so much for joining us on this show. We're airing this show this week because coming up real soon in a few weeks, they're going to have their annual Black Monday event, which is now year 10. Right?
Year 10.
So we're going to talk about how that started and what that's all about as well. And so we'll start off with you, Joe. If you could talk about your recovery, your experience, and what happened before your son passed away, like the struggle that you witnessed and what you went through.
Sure. Thanks so much, Lisa, for having us. Tay, very nice to participate here in the podcast with you. I did not realize it was going to be filmed, so that's kind of a nice surprise. I'm glad I combed my hair. And at any rate, it's a long story. You know, as you mentioned, I'm relatively young when I was entered recovery. I was 26 years old.
Oh, wow.
Had 3 sons at the time. 2 different mothers were involved. And then through getting clean and sober, you know, I got back together with one of my kids' moms. So before I knew it, I have 4 sons I have 2 5-year-olds, a 4-year-old, and a baby.
Wow.
All within, you know, and I figure this is God's plan for me. He wants me to be a dad, and this is what I'm supposed to do.
And to create a small town.
And to create a small town. Unfortunately, that thing, having a family, kind of took me further away from my program of recovery, and unfortunately, that relationship did not last. I ended up getting primary custody of all 4 of my sons. I was single father for almost 15 years, where I was the main parent, and I was due to being in recovery. And at the time, my kids were small. They became teenagers. They needed to eat. They needed to print stuff, for school at the time, and then whatever you had to turn in a paperwork like tomorrow, You know, I'm running out to Kinko's in the middle of the night because his brother used the printer ink to draw, you know, fish or whatever. You know what I mean? So stuff like that happens. Right. It was very chaotic. A lot of love, a lot of fun. But at the time, I was in construction. You know, there's a lot of I had jumped back into my recovery program full force and ended up taking a lot of commitments there and working, you know, and they're teenagers, so they don't want to hang out with me anyways. And I don't even notice it, but my two older sons are getting addicted to, at that time, Oxycontin was a drug of choice, and it was all around high school.
And they knew you were in recovery.
And they knew it, and I was very open. I was very open. I would take them to different, you know, recovery meetings for
Were they
friends and
interested
family.
when they went? Did they like it?
Well, they would go they would go and hang out with the other kids, because it was the kids. The parents would be in recovery, and then the kids would hang out in the other room. You know,
gotcha.
And so they hung out. So very, very open. You know, and sometimes I wonder, did I, I'm very open. I was very open about it all along. You know, did I help stimulate that? But I come from a long line of alcoholism. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's been no male in my 50s that's lived out of their 50s. They've all died of cirrhosis. You know, in my family. So it runs deep. And I don't realize that my kids are becoming addicted.
I feel if you have a choice, it's better to talk about it and be the one that talks about it first anyway.
Right.
Because my family tree is also riddled with alcoholism, and my mom was in recovery my whole childhood, and she never talked about it.
Sure.
So I didn't really know any good thing that she was actually experiencing. I just saw what we experienced at home, right?
Right.
So I feel intuitively that it's a good thing. You know, it's not necessarily going to save somebody.
Agreed. I mean, obviously, that turned out to be true on July 21st, 2011, when I came home and found my 19-year-old son passed away, and at that time, after that unbelievable just opening up of your soul, you know what I mean? When you just get crushed and broken open, that obviously I've heard that's when God that gives space for God to come in, you know. And I believe that to be true in my case. After some period of grief, I still continue with grief. I mean, an underlining disposition that I have is sadness, and certainly that has been enabled me to.
Well, it's only been like a little bit
forward.
more than a decade, right?
Yeah. And within the first year afterwards, I sat around my kitchen table with a couple other parents that had, the heroin epidemic had affected their lives as well. And I said, we should help. We should do something. I don't know what the help's going to look like, but we're going to need some money. And what we did is we had a garage sale, and we had a community yard sale. We made $800, and we gave $500 of away to sober living houses, and that became something that we could tangibly do. We could tangibly do that. We can raise money, talk about substance use disorder, because it is a chronic progressive illness that there's people running laps at Relay for Life or cancer.
Right.
Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. There's a lot of nonprofits doing things like that.
Yeah.
So I had jumped online and found There Is No Hero in Heroin. Jan Nargi, she had wrote a book called There Is No Hero in Heroin.
Oh.
And she wrote about her son. She was in Tucson, Arizona. Her son is to my knowledge, is still living. He was on medically assisted treatment and very successful after that. But she asked if I would like to start a Las Vegas chapter, and that came in line with me talking to my other friends that were parents, and we did, and we had a yard sale, and we started donating money towards sober living, and we did that, and throughout the years we've donated over $55,000 towards sober living.
That's wonderful.
And that was just from doing golf tournaments. The Black Monday, which you mentioned at the beginning of the show, was a program that Jan had started in Tucson. So she had just gifted me the nonprofit, to be able to run underneath hers, to be a daughter foundation under her foundation. So it was really easy for me. I was super lucky.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, she's talking about the meeting space became a nonprofit last year, and it has been like an education in learning how to fundraise. And ironically, we're having a garage sale this
weekend.
This weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to benefit the meeting space.
There
So I
you
find
go.
the timing of this. I mean, today, because today's Friday, so it's this weekend. Yeah.
That's a very good start.
Yeah.
Sheesh. Okay.
Understood. So from there, I mean, she ended up signing it all over to me a couple of years later. But her Black Monday was basically a symposium. You know, she had got a couple of city leaders out in Tucson, and she said, "Could you do something like that in Vegas?" And she gave me a little blueprint of what to do. And so we went out to a couple of our friends in the community. We got a judge from drug court to speak.
Cedric, right? Judge
Kearns was second year.
Okay.
Was year two, and Judge Kearns is a very good friend, and he's been an advisor since the beginning. But we had Judge Bell.
Okay.
We had Councilman Steve Ross, whom I grew up with, who's he's recently passed away. He's a dear friend of mine. He was at the time Mayor Pro Tem, and he helped to get me into the Mayor's Faith Initiative to start networking with some of those people. He was one of our speakers. We had Dr. Gloria Montgomery. She was fabulous. I don't know if you know her from she's a long-term clean, sober, very, very, from Hollywood and Vine down in Southern California.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we had Dr. Mel Pohl at the time, and it was neat. So we had a little panel going on, and then we had a carnation wall to where we would honor all different phases of substance use disorder, addiction. You know, we would sell a red carnation to represent somebody who's passed away, a white carnation for somebody who's in recovery, and a black carnation for somebody who's still in the throes of addiction.
Wow.
So we did that. So we like to touch the bereavement, and we had maybe about half a dozen community providers. You know, we had 100 people there, and we had the news came, and it was really kind of neat. And anyway, that was our first one. You know, and so we've grown from there, and since then we've gone on to do skeet tournaments, or actually called sporting plays. You know, so we fundraise. That's one of our fundraising streams. And at one of our Black Monday events, we do it annually, the Monday that's around closest to Valentine's Day.
Why close to Valentine's Day?
That's because that's what Jan did, and that's what Jan told me to do.
Okay.
Because those
no deep story. No. Or if it is, it's her story.
I follow directions very well, and honestly, I've been talked to the past 10 years. People have talked about the name. There is no hero in heroin. It's a mouthful. You know, heroin is sometimes harsh on the ears, which it's different nowadays.
I love it. I love
it's
that
not
phrase.
near.
I think it's catchy.
You know, but she's all, you know, so her story is that, so it's a really neat story about her. Generation Found was a movie about a recovery high school. Greg Williams was the movie producer of that, and then he also produced a movie before that called The Anonymous People, which changed my view on recovery. It really did.
On recovery entirely?
On recovery entirely. You know, I'm 20 years sober when I'm watching this movie, and his idea is that there's programs of recovery that actually are very beneficial, and they help millions of people every day. Let's bring it up out of church basements and let's talk about it. You know, if everybody who is, you know, has a substance use disorder, if they decide to vote, we're going to change.
Yes. Yeah.
We're going to change a lot of things.
Yes.
A lot of us. So I mean, let's talk about it.
We're all about that.
Let's show that we're loud and proud about recovery. Yep. So I mean, so that changed my life, and then the Anonymous, then the Generation Found came around, and that was the movie about the recovery high school, the one down in Texas, and I signed up to do a showing here in Las Vegas, and at the time I had friends Jeff Horn and Don Jersey that I had looped in, and we were going to try to build a recovery high school.
Of the movie?
So the screening,
gotcha.
so the screening for this movie, it wasn't released completely, but you could apply to release, and then you would have to sell half the movie tickets, you know, in order for it to tip. They called it the tipping point. And I was at a conference. Actually, I was at the Recovery High School conference in Austin, Texas. I got off the plane and I was checking my phone to see how many tickets we sold, because are we going to tip? Is this even going to go off? Because the idea is that we get all these city leaders here. Mm-hmm. and community leaders, bring them to the showing, and let's make this Recovery High School a thing here in Las Vegas. And I get off the phone, I get off the plane, I look at my phone, and I see that we tipped. Somebody bought 40 tickets. And, and I was like, my goodness. And I looked to see, it was Jan Nargi. It was the founder from Tucson, Arizona. She had followed us, and she said, Joe, I called her, I said, Jan, that was so nice. You helped us to tip. And she said, I just hope that the right people are in the room, Joe, that this is a success and you're able to pull this off.
Me too. I'm like,
I've never heard from her since.
Wow.
She's passed away. Her family got a hold of me. She passed away on a beach in Virginia when she was home visiting family. Super sad. So I don't know if that was one of her last things that she was doing, because she suffered from depression as well, right? So I mean, that was so she helped us to tip. And I don't know if that movie was the one that, brought Mission High School here, but it kept our momentum going, and it was a wonderful showing.
Beautiful.
We had a great time, great screening. Our May of 2017, it gets on the Mission High School. Our buddy Jeff, who's one of the three amigos, he talks the school board into putting this onto the agenda. And we go down and bring the power of recovery to the school board meeting. It's a 3-hour meeting. We're like the bottom, we're like the last one on the agenda. And we had people. We brought in a prospective student, brought in her grandmother. We brought in me, Jeff, the councilman, brought in, there's 50 people got up, and you had to call and actually say that you wanted to do public comment at this public meeting, and when they voted, it was a marvelous time. Everybody was wearing my Tin Hot yellow shirts. I was in the audience, and everybody cheered and erupted and standing ovation. And one of the reporters came up to me afterwards and said, Joe, I've been covering these school board meetings for years. I've never seen a standing ovation.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So Mission High School was born, and it was born out of grief.
That's amazing.
The alternative peer group model helps with the social activities, the not so fun things. These kids have been talked to their whole lives.
Yeah, I actually went there and spoke recently, and I brought my friend Kira, who's been on an episode for young people in recovery, and she's 21 years old, a year sober, and I felt like they would more likely identify with her.
Sure.
So I brought her.
Sure.
And she loved it. And so since then, she filled out the thing to become a volunteer and everything, and she's all excited about that. She's going to school for psychology.
Okay.
And so, yeah. But I was sharing, and I was trying to not share like I am 51 years old. Like, I was trying to share, like, I remember when I was, whatever, but I was watching them while they were watching me, and I could tell, like, you could only talk, but if somebody doesn't, if they feel like they're being talked at, then their ears are going to shut, and that's how I was at that age. I was exposed to recovery. I just, I didn't have ears. I didn't believe it would help me. And so it was interesting. I was trying to do what I do, but I ended up saying I'll be back because I know that if they see me more often, then they'll be more comfortable, and then it won't be like that. But I loved it. I love the room of it all. I love the video games and the really cool sit on the floor, sit on the couch kind of vibe, and it's really cool. And you guys have that room, which we're doing a whole episode on APR. So I don't know, APG. I don't know why I'm doing this, but they have this whole room where they have clothes and shoes and boutique stuff that people that the adolescents can buy things from with
incentives.
Incentives.
They earn SID bucks.
And they get what do they get, coins or credits or something?
My daughter-in-law Sydney, she always wanted to create a giving boutique.
Yeah, it's for the giving boutique.
And so rather than just giving somebody some free clothes, they actually they can earn SID bucks by going to outside meetings, by obtaining to other.
And how they earn them, like structure. By doing like
going to outside recovery meetings, going, right along those lines.
The healthy things.
The healthy things, healthy time management.
We should actually, when we do our movie sale, which we're doing right now because it's Friday. We should actually look to see if there's anything that they might like. That
For
and
sure.
we only open it one day a week, so it's more of an event. So it gives, they worked for it, it's valued.
That sounds like fun. There's really high quality stuff in there.
And they,
I was like, I like this hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some really cool stuff in there.
And there was a lot of love that went into painting that room and getting it set up. Because we're in the commercial center. It's an older building, and it's tough. It's tough to stay afloat. But we try to make it nice.
I would have liked a place like that when I was a teen.
Yeah,
hands down.
Me too, and I was in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and I didn't even grow up in New York. I grew up in New York. I didn't grow up here.
And that's one of the things that we really strive to work out in 2019. So there's an association for alternative peer groups, that's nationwide, and APG Las Vegas won the best APG startup in 2019, which was pretty cool.
That's really
we're
cool.
super excited about that.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is how do you make it cool and fun?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has to be. It has to be meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And so, wow, what a story. Jeez. Like you have to feel the presence of God in everything of this.
Every time. So when the APG opened up, I didn't have any money. Jeff said, in May, the school board passed, and we got the Mission High School school board, the school, to build the mission or to rehab mission in like 3 months. He's like, why don't you, start an APG and get that going? And I'm like, so a friend of mine got us into City Impact Center. And City Impact Center, and he had a room because you could have this. And I said, I don't have any money. He said, I don't want your money. He said, I want my sponsor's money so I could help people in the community like you. So,
wow, I love that.
So he gave us 3 months to incubate, to start. And then when Mission opened up, we went on site for Mission for the first couple of years. And then then after 2 years on site at Mission, the State Opioid Response Grant Fund, which we talked about grant funding earlier,
we're really going to have another conversation after this.
But that's enabled us to open up, that office at APG, and then our outpatient clinical office, a little bit later. And now I'm looking at possible, county contract with the Harbor, which is a juvenile diversion.
Oh, that's cool.
Which will be huge, which will build my census completely. It'll raise it up. So we become, from the garage sale, a bona fide adolescent treatment center, outpatient treatment center that really was born out of grief, and as effectively, with all the events that we've done, we've affected thousands and thousands of lives. You know what I mean? And that's born out of grief.
That is so cool.
So it's really it's amazing. It's a lot of work. I still have a full-time job, but I have wonderful volunteers. Krista came on board after the first Black Monday. She saw our ad in the our news story, and she says, "I'm at this treatment center, and I want to network and meet people." So I go in to see her, and she's just smiling. And this is 10 years ago, right? And
12 years ago now.
And she's just grinning from ear to ear, and just pretty, and just young, and just like, oh, how can I help? And now she's still here. So
she still looks very, very young.
She does.
Can I ask how old you are?
I'm 35.
You're not.
Yeah.
Wow. So, she must fool all the adolescents then. They must
they like me a little bit.
She has a young voice, too. Yeah. All right, awesome. Okay. Well, you know what? This is a good time to take a break. And we're going to go to break right now. And when we come back, we'll talk to Krista, and we'll find out a little bit about what got her involved and what she's all about as well. So, see you in a bit. Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them. We do not represent any 12-step program, and nothing that you hear today should replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. And you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and on Amazon Fire TV. You can listen to us on the PHLV Radio app, or you can get our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeart Radio, and Alexa, right?
That's what it says.
So we're on Alexa. The only thing I know about Alexa is I have to keep telling her to shut up when she says something in my house because I have no idea how to use it. And if you missed any of our episodes, you can also catch them all on themeetingspace.com, where they're always posted. Every Friday, we post it up there. Super easy. If you're looking to be on a future episode, please fill out an intake form on that same page where all the videos are on themeetingspace.com. And just click on The Real Recovery Show. Okay, and so now we're back from our break, and I have to cough. And we're all good now. Okay, so we're back from our break, and now we're going to talk to Krista, and we're going to hear a little bit about why she's so passionate and how she got involved in No Hero and Heroin.
So this started a long time ago. I was in my bachelor's program, and I lost my uncle to suicide by overdose. And it was something that I had been completely naive about in my family, and how substance use had kind of run rampant in my family over that time. So this was my first, real exposure to it hitting home, and understanding kind of what our family dynamic actually looked like versus what it was on the surface. So I was actually pre-med at the time, and I in turn pivoted. I was like, there's something more to this.
What were you studying at the time?
I was pre-medical. I wanted to go to school to be a pediatrician.
Okay.
I had my heart set on that at the time. But I moved back home because this was kind of like a triggering event to be closer to my family. Yeah. So I moved back home and decided to finish my degree here. And I took an intro to substance use class, and fell in love with just being able to better understand that and being able to understand kind of what my family had gone through. And then shortly after that, during my master's program, I lost my grandmother to suicide by overdose. So same side of the family hit us again. And she and I were literally as thick as thieves. So then my education delved into this even more. How could I not see the signs and symptoms? Why did I not notice that last goodbye was the last goodbye? Those type of things. So I had already started therapy at the time because during my bachelor's degree, my professors had always told us that the best therapists are in therapy themselves. So I had kind of already started that, and so I had a good support network to process through that grief and everything.
God. Yeah.
And I'm very, very thankful for that because things could have quickly gone downhill.
Absolutely.
So it was a little bit after my grandma's passing that I had saw in the newspaper an article about Joe and his family and what they had gone through. I was working in treatment here in medically assisted treatment. And I invited him to come meet with me because I knew that I needed to give back in some way so that other families didn't have to go through the same experiences that we were going through, because it literally divided our family, destroyed relationships, things like that. So he came over to the treatment center. We sat down. We had a conversation in person, better understand his story, better understand where I was coming from kind of thing. And it was, how can I help? And so I started volunteering at garage sales, at events, anywhere I could that they were doing at the time. And then turned into Black Monday volunteering, and that kind of really being a safe space for me every year. Started looking forward to that every year. Then one day Joe convinced me that I needed to do more than that. So he asked me to be part of the board. And at the same time, I also kind of took lead on Black Monday involuntarily without him knowing I was taking lead, sort of. I just said, hey, I know we can make this bigger, and I know we can hit more people. So I took it, and I kind of ran with it. I've been the lead for Black Monday now for 5 years. And in that, we've grown it from the little itty bitty 100-person Black Monday that we started with to now expecting over 1,000 people this year.
Wow.
It's now the largest substance use awareness event in the state of Nevada.
Nice.
And we pride ourselves in that. I take personal pride in that because I know that's 1,000 people that we're affecting in just a few short hours.
And everybody they affect, and everybody they affect, and everybody they affect.
100%. So we always use the hashtag bring a friend. And
Yeah.
that's why it's continuously grown every year because people come with the idea of just wanting to figure out what it is, but then the next year they come with 10 more people because they now know what it is. And so we've just developed it from there. 3 years ago, Joe asked me to become board president. So the first official board president after him. And since then, we've developed additional activities, such as like our Rock for Recovery event, which is our annual family-friendly concert now that we put on to raise funds for life scholarships for the seniors that are graduating from Mission High School.
Wow.
And we've kind of just continued to grow things and continued to... I've personally used Tin High as like my safe space for my grief.
Wow. I love that.
Not everything worked. The recovery road trip was a whole lot of fun, but it didn't make any money.
The recovery road trip?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Where'd you go?
They
we
went
went to Disneyland.
Oh.
We did a day trip to Disneyland.
And they had a great time.
Yeah.
But I had to pay the bills. I said, we got to stop doing fundraisers. We need to do fundraisers. We do a lot of fundraisers. We do plenty of those.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
But, it's been wonderful to be able to do things like that. And some of our kids, we bring them on camping trips. Some of our kids, we took a couple years ago, we had a trip, or maybe a year and a half ago, we had a trip to Southern California. Some of our kids never even seen the ocean. And we did a one-day deep sea fishing off the pier.
Oh, that's nice.
Stuff
Camping
like
trips doesn't cost that much, does it?
We do camp every year.
Yeah,
We do a camp
camping's
every year.
good too because
Some
it
are
gets them out into nature.
They're not cheap.
I don't know, but don't you feel? I shouldn't say don't you feel, but don't you feel that I feel like addiction. One of the reasons why it's been on the rise is how disconnected we are from nature, and like generation after generation. Now everybody's in front of a cell phone, a TV, or a video game.
Especially in Vegas. I
Yeah.
mean, you're not just in the desert, so there is no ocean,
Right.
But you're surrounded by the glitz and glamour of the Strip, and so it's a completely I can't say it's a completely different childhood because I didn't grow up anywhere else, but I did grow up here. And so, I do feel like there is a difference in, trying to connect with people and trying to connect in a different way. Like, I don't know my neighbors. I never have, but other people do, and that's a normal thing elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. When I grew up in New York, I grew up. We had money when I was a kid, and so we went to like sleepaway camp. And so there's things you learn when you're out in nature and you're learning. You get the Red Cross test and you learn how to swim, or they just throw you in the lake like it was my experience, but whatever. But I don't know. You learn things and you get more in touch with nature, and to this day, I love hiking now, and I love camping, and I love all being outside and swimming and going to the water. Because growing up in New York. So maybe some of these kids never experienced that experience, and maybe that's that disconnect of being up in the head, which is a very big reason why we're addicts, is we just overthink things, or we're just disconnected and we don't really see the big picture, and we're out and we're learning to maybe interact with other people in a camping situation. So I don't know why I'm getting so hung up on the camp, but I just feel like this.
It's just when you're talking about how much you enjoy nature and outdoors and all that stuff, and I was just thinking about how much I love hotel rooms. And we've had so many times.
We can never go away because she wants to be inside.
Well, I think the biggest thing too is like our camping trips aren't just camping trips. Like, we make sure that we have a clinician with the kids because as soon as they start experiencing any sort of symptom whatsoever that they need to process. So, like, it's more than just a camping trip for us, like, because of that.
And we got to have, I mean, any of our volunteers got to be Nevada Department of Public Safety background check. We got to send a nurse with them. We got to send
it is.
You know,
Yeah,
I mean, it is, I mean,
very
and
involved.
they have activities. And we have a rec therapist, a recreational therapist.
How do you make sure
who
that
comes
they
with
don't,
us.
like, none of the adolescents do drugs? How do you make sure?
Well, we have a 1 to 4 ratio with adults to kids to campers.
like, do you test? Do you drug test, like, on trips?
We do. Well, before and after tests. I mean, it you know, we don't drug test all the time, but we have
Enough to make
reasonable suspicion.
yeah.
They know. I mean, we have drug tests in the office, and for sure, there's plenty of people that, you know, they get drug tested. You know,
Yeah, when I went to APG, like, the general consensus I got off of the people that the teenagers that were hanging out there was that one had relapsed and was genuinely upset that he relapsed and wanting to really work it out. And that's the mindset that I feel like, okay, so that happened, but you could tell that this one really, really wanted it, but it was aware of his own issues, like that he slipped, you know. And so,
they're very protective of APG. So, like, our regular kids, they will 100% rat on someone that they think is maybe potentially behind the scenes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
not good for the group.
That's amazing.
And that's the positive peer pressure.
Oh my
we want.
God.
And that's the whole goal that we were going for. And we're watching it. We see it. And they definitely, and the kids, I mean, these kids are 15 years old, 16 years old. They may or may not even be, you know, full-blown addiction, right? Full-blown alcoholic.
Right.
You know, I mean, they may, you know, so we don't, you know, we honestly really don't know. So they could, you know, years from now find out that, you know, that they, you know, can drink. You know, that certainly
Sure, but at least, you know, now they'll have
But they know that there's a
tools.
safe place, and they know that. See, so there's a guy, Father Greg Boyle, Homeboy Industries down in Southern California. I quote him often. He's fabulous. You know, he gets asked a lot, you know, about what he thinks. You know, what should we, you know, what's the answer? He deals with the formerly incarcerated, and he gets asked all the time. And his answer, he said, well, let's assume that the answer is kindness. And let's go from there. Let's start with that, and that, and I heard that, and I just could not, you know,
I agree.
feel any differently. You know, I mean, and that's what we're trying to do at the Alternative Peer Group is to just surround them with loving, nurturing arms and let them know that, you know, they matter, because they do. You know, everybody matters. You know, there's nobody who's more important than anyone else, you know, and most of our kids have been told the opposite of that for a very long time.
I truly agree. I feel like we're so in alignment. Like, the mission. So when the recovery store and the meeting space started, it started on a main road, and in the beginning we had people constantly calling us because they were lost, because they couldn't fathom the idea that it was on a main road. They thought that all the meetings were going to be in some, like, you know, bottom of a church or a back part of an industrial park or something or whatever. And so, but we would say that it's in the front because we shouldn't be hiding this, because we want, Tay-Tay and I have this God mission inside of us that whatever we end up getting guided to do, we feel that it's to break the stigma, to, like, make it so matter of fact. Like, so you got involved in drugs, so you did this, so you were cutting for a bit, so you had this situation where you ended up having anger episodes and all this stuff came out this way. And now, okay, so now what are we doing? What's really going on? Everybody has something, stuff's coming out sideways, you know, what's really going on? This is what we're doing. And that's the whole purpose of the show. And so when you say, like, why don't we just start with kindness, is because that's where we all can be, you know, because that's all that's really going on, is that people are uncomfortable in their own skin and they're without tools, they're overwhelmed. The story about themselves is way too big for their little bodies to handle, and whatever it is, you know. And so, God, you know, what you guys are doing is so incredibly powerful, because I know that teenage Lisa would have loved that, craved it desperately. But I also grew up in alcoholism. Both my parents were addicted, right? My whole family tree has stuff. Do you find that most of, or what percentage of the adolescents that come to Mission High School or go and are involved or that you're helpful to, do you find with APG, do you find that they come from alcoholism? Do you find that they have dysfunctional childhoods?
They come from alcoholism or dysfunction, oftentimes. I don't have I was just talking to staff earlier today. I need to have more numbers, more outcomes, more of this. I need to be able to throw this off, just spit it right out. But I don't know. But
you'd say most.
More times.
Because it makes the most sense, I mean, where are you going to learn the tools you need to be able to cope with things? Like when your grandmother, so when your grandmother and your uncle committed suicide, did they have addiction or were they just depression?
Uncle did. Grandmother did not. Grandmother was depression.
Okay.
And just had easy access to lots of medications in a very quick, short time.
Right. Yeah. My grandmother drank an entire bottle of Listerine on medication, and they took her to the hospital, and she was like, I don't know how old, just 80, 90 something years old or something, and it was just like, wow, you know. But yeah, so I'm so sorry about that. She made it though. Anyway. So, yeah, I mean, if you don't have the tools, and when you're growing up and you feel so alone and dysfunction, you'll feel separate from other people, you'll feel terminally unique. It's one of the reasons why we can become addicts. It's not the only thing.
It's a separation.
But it's that feeling of being separate and unique and different and just alone.
It's the alone.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you think about a teenager, they're trying to figure out who they are, already. That's already it. And if they feel like nobody gets them,
and then if they feel like they don't have the tools on how to handle, when maybe they're feeling bullied, or maybe they're feeling like they're failing or not enough in some way, or maybe school's hard or something, or peer pressure or whatever, it's like if you don't have the tools and you don't have a safe place to be able to have a conversation in the don't talk, don't trust, don't feel environment of dysfunction when you're a kid, And
if the only people that are reaching out to you or making you feel a part of are the people that are using, then what other choice do you have? Either be alone or be high, and that's a hard choice. Yeah.
People want to comfort. I mean, you want to, right? Even to this day, I want to be comforted.
Right.
To this day.
Well, I mean, addiction is a family disease too, and it's not just because of the things that they don't learn. It's, we're all healing from stuff, and so when both my parents had their own traumas, and so even if they didn't ever pick up a substance or any kind of overt addiction, just the stuff that wasn't healed made them guarded around their children, made them whatever. And so, I don't know. But, everything that we do in this life to be able to, break the chain, to do everything that we possibly can. I just love what you guys are doing. It makes my heart happy.
I think that's the biggest thing is, what drew me to Tin High and what continues to draw me to Tin High is it is always a safe space. It does not matter if you relapsed last night and you come in and tell us this morning, I don't know what to do. I relapsed last night. We've created that space to be able to have that conversation and it be okay. We don't love you any less because you relapsed last night. Let's just get you back on track today. And that's kind of especially with Black Monday, the energy in the atmosphere. If you go to Black Monday,
you feel it.
At Black Monday is just insane.
We actually donated to Black Monday.
You did?
Yeah, and then I got sick. I have epilepsy, and I was like, I was not going to be able to handle a crowd.
Right.
And so Tay went, and you brought somebody else, I think, from the store.
No, Albert came with me.
Oh, Albert, my ex-husband.
Last year's?
No, it was 4 years ago.
It was before COVID.
Oh, at UNLV?
3 or 4 years ago.
UNLV.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got feedback last year that it felt like a family reunion. And that was the biggest blessing for me to hear that because that's what we're going for. We want everyone to feel
trying to create
this is a tribe.
That's beautiful.
A great big family. And
so anybody can go to Black Monday?
Free to attend.
Okay.
That's something that we've kept it from the beginning and we'll continue to.
So describe Black Monday. Give a picture of what the event is and why people would be attracted to going to.
So Black Monday, it's kind of all encompassing. We have something for everyone, no matter how substance use has affected your family. It is the largest recovery resource fair in the state. So already, as of right now, we have 70 resources from across the state, both north and south. Yeah, like it's literally shocking because it goes up about 5 to 10 resources every year. So
is that like 70 tables?
70 tables.
Wow.
Everywhere from...
There was maybe 20 or 30 when I was there. Yeah.
I think we had one of the tables.
Yeah, we had one of the tables. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's everyone from treatment to sober living to medical providers to lawyers to real estate agents that are looking to help individuals in recovery buy their first home. Like it's literally everything across the gamut. This year we're doing a couple of different interactive memorial kind of displays. So we're collecting individual stories this year on a gigantic banner that's going to be displayed at APG after, because our theme this year is more than a memory. And so we're trying to take those memories and turn them into a movement. So we have that going. We're going to have another display this year to represent the total number of overdoses last year, which usually is pretty impactful with that. We have our flower wall, like Joe talked about, that continues year to year and fills up more and more, hoping that at some point we tip the scale and we get more white flowers than we do red or black flowers that are up there. We also do Narcan trainings, so we do overdose prevention, and this year we're actually adding in harm reduction trainings too.
Oh, awesome.
So if we have anyone attending that's still in the throes of addiction, we can help them at least be a little bit safer. And we give out free overdose reversal kits, including Narcan in them. This year we're also giving out fentanyl test strips for anyone that needs them. We have
part
a
of
photo
the harm
booth.
reduction.
Part of the harm reduction, yep. And then we have a photo booth that we always do that's always fun.
This is a different photo booth. This is a cool one. This is the
So we have
360.
a 360
Spin 360.
Oh, God. What is
Super
that?
So that'll be unique and different this year. And then we do a program where we bring in a keynote speaker. We give out 4 recovery-related awards to people in the community, like Hero of the Year, Boots on the Ground, those type of things.
Who's the speaker?
So this year it's Brandon Novak. He's a best-selling author, former professional skateboarder. He was the first skateboarder to ever be endorsed by Gatorade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was a teenager. He kind of mentored under Tony
Can we
Hawk.
say the show he used to be on? He was with Johnny Knoxville and Steve-O. And the
On
Jackass.
Viva La Bam.
What show?
It was on
Jackass.
MTV, Jackass. And Viva La
You
Bam.
never seen Jackass? My kids grew up watching that. They loved it.
It's
Those
kind of
guys
my
used to do some-
51 years
They
old.
used to do some really bad. They used to do some crazy stuff for sure. For sure.
I've heard of it.
I remember watching it as a kid.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
We
Yeah.
constantly have conversations of what one of us remembers and one of us doesn't.
Right. Yeah, so he's coming out. He has a super unique story because he literally had it all. He was a millionaire 3 times over, and his addiction just got the best of him, and so he lost all of his endorsements and had to literally go rock bottom. Took 13 treatment attempts before it finally clicked.
Wow.
He has a best-selling book that
It would
was
be
on...
good to have him on the show, too.
Yeah, let's try to get that arranged.
All right. Well, we're nearing the end of the hour. We have a little bit under 10 minutes left. Is there anything that you would like to say to get the message out to anybody who's listening about how they could be involved in it, or if they're struggling with their own addiction or potential addiction as an adolescent, or if they're a parent or a family member?
So something I'd like to just throw out there when I was talking to my new clinician who's coming on board, when I was talking about Black Monday, and I said 1 in 3 families suffer from experience substance use disorder at some level. Black Mondays, we should be having that at the Elysian Stadium. That's how many people are affected. She's like, Joe, but what's the draw? What if that's true? Then what is the draw? What is it? So that's something that I think it's a question I want to work on. Is that if it is true that addiction and substance use disorder and mental health disorders affect 1 in 3 families, what is the draw? What can we offer them at a Black Monday event to bring them in to get that information out there? And certainly, it is, a keynote speaker, but there's got to be something else. What is it? Something else that I'm missing. So that's what I thought maybe we could just work on. I don't know. I mean, 10 years we started with a garage sale, and it seems like in order to get followers or to get anywhere I've had to create some sort of content. Whether what is in the beginning, I created an email list.
It'll come. Yeah.
I created a website. But
No, I believe it'll come. Some sort of like recovery, positive program of just like, hey, like plug into this, get these free groups, free classes or whatever with this. Plug into this, and your child can do these. Your teenager can do this program and get these, things on their record that looks good for when they do whatever, stuff like that. It's so difficult to reach into a dysfunctional family because the dysfunction wants to contain itself,
right.
know?
Well, and
so unless somebody is in it actually admitting that they're struggling with some aspect of it, whether they're the parent struggling with the kids or the kids struggling with the parent, there's just this hey, let's not let anybody know that this is going on. So like on the individual level, they're stuffing feelings and they're trying to fake it and not let people know that they're suffering. But as an aggregate, the dysfunctional family does it. Like there's dysfunctional families that you can never tell anybody what goes on in this house. Like that you could not do that. Right. And you feel like a sense of kind of misplaced, but not misplaced loyalty to a family member who might even be putting you in harm's way because they're your family member, and you don't want to say bad things about them, or you're afraid to say bad things about them in your own effort to get help, of what would that, you can get hurt or abandonment or whatever it is. So it's hard to reach in unless they're reaching out. The best thing, it's always attraction, not promotion, right? And so the best thing is to be as attractive as possible and to have real tools and things that people can do to get involved. I mean, it takes a lot of humility for a parent to say, hey, I might need help with my teenager or my child or something. It takes great humility. They think it's a reflection
upon them.
They do.
Unfortunately.
They do.
And I know it was 7 years after my son's passing before I even went to go see a grief counselor myself.
Wow.
And I went for a year, and it was a marvelous experience. And I'm still friends with that counselor today. But I know, and I remember she had told me she's a bereaved parent as well. And when she told me when I first started seeing her that she knew her daughter had lived exactly how long as she was supposed to live. She had a path, and I was like, wow, how can I? And I don't know if I'm completely there yet, but I know my son's life had a meaning and had a purpose, and I'm going to talk about it.
I do believe that, because I do believe, and this might be too deep for this, but whatever, here goes. I do believe that we're all, like that saying, we're all souls having a human experience. I do believe we're living 2 lives at the same time. The one that nobody knows about and the one that we are interacting with the public with, and that's why I feel like it's such a surprise when somebody kills themselves, right? Or does anything that you think that is out of their character, because you're seeing more likely the character they're interacting with you with than not what's really internally going on. But on the deeper level, there's the stuff that we go through with our headspace and the stuff that we need to release, but there's also, because everybody has that fundamental idea of God within them, whether you call it God or not. You could be an atheist and still call it gut feeling and just your own instinct, right? But everybody has something within them, and that is our deeper walk, and everybody has the deeper walk. And they might be blocking it and being busy and focused on all the other things. They might be codependent and focused on another person, or they could be, in addiction themselves. But it's always there, and it's always calling for them, and there's this experience. And so my belief is that the body is the temporary experience and the soul is having this consciousness experience, and whatever they're supposed to experience to whatever their own classroom that they're in, that's what they're here to do. And so, you know, when somebody passes away, I look in my mind, I just look to them as the soul, not the body story that I had about them. And that helps me to connect to them, and also to help me see that, you know, just like I didn't know what my highest good looks like in the form of just this life, I couldn't possibly say I know what somebody else's highest good looks like, and nobody knows the deeper things that I've walked through, even though I'm doing a lot of effort in trying to tell you guys all of it. But the truth is, this is a walk that's like, it's a solo walk each of us go on deeper down, you know, where we have our experience and we're working stuff out and we're questioning stuff, and we're trying to do like what you guys are doing, so obviously what we're inspired to do, you know. And so in the grand picture, look what's come from it, you know. And so I mean, I truly believe that. I'll say this last thing on the subject. I actually called my mother, I think a month ago or something, and I said, you know, everything that happened in that house, it couldn't have done a better job to really cement in me how much recovery and healing are needed in our society. And I think that if I had maybe one less of those experiences, I wouldn't have really had such a like an understanding and a passion. And if I personally didn't go through the homelessness, the drug addiction, and so, you know, sleeping with people for money and all the things that happened, the health issues and all the stuff that happened and the nearly dying and all that stuff, if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't have what God has me seeing things from that perspective. I would have probably had a nice little cush life, you know, and been like, oh, I'm so sorry that person is dealing with that, you know, and not had any kind of understanding whatsoever. And my life might have been happy, but it wouldn't have had this purpose, right? And so, and I don't feel that the soul stops. And so who your son really is, you know, knows this. And I know that. And so it's all for the highest purpose, right? Yeah. And so we all live our life here, and we do what we feel is the best that we can, and what we're here to learn, we learn, and what we don't, I don't know, we have more experiences that help us. That's my opinion. Take what you like and leave the rest. And I used up the rest of the time.
I was just going to say one thing, though, about that, you know, about how, like, you feel like we could, if the people that are impacted by this showed up, it would fill a stadium. And I feel like that part of that is what you were talking about earlier with the stigma. Because, I mean, we've talked about suicidal ideation and suicide a lot on the show, and for me, like, some of the most impactful suicides were Robin Williams and most recently Twitch, because they're two of the most, like, jovial, happy, humorous humans that we've seen in the public eye, and they were so depressed. And so, like, for me, and I know I've said this a few times, I'm sorry I'm getting choked up, because, like, this is, like, my thing, like, this stigma keeps killing people. So until we kill the stigma, the stigma is going to kill. And so, like, for me, like, that's the biggest thing, is if we could kill the stigma, we would totally pack Allegiant Stadium, and we'd have to do it for 2 days. You know, like, like it's the stigma that is killing people, and so that's the next big thing to kill.
Which is not just an addiction. This is perpetuated by society, because society is all about, you know, having it all, looking like you have it all. You got to look good. You got to have all the cash and prizes, and the kids, and the this, and the degrees, and whatever. And it's all about that. You know, it's not at all about what's really going on. And so if it takes a bunch of addicts and people who have really struggled with other people's addictions or traumas and stuff, if it takes people who have felt deeply and have been so affected to rise up and have a real conversation and have nobody tell them anymore, like, don't talk about that. There's nothing that we can't talk about. because it's the silence that's killing us. And so, yeah, like whatever it is you feel guided, because you are obviously driven and you guys are obviously inspired. I'm sure that whatever it is that's going to attract and provide some genuine resource for more of the adolescents and more of the families to get help, it's going to happen, because we're all swept up in this movement right now, and that's bigger than all of us. And I'm grateful for that, because it's better than where I was. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks for having
And
us.
so Black Monday is coming up. It's on February 13th, and it's going to be at
Central Church.
Central Church.
Oh, wow.
Where?
Okay.
In Henderson.
In Henderson.
1001 New Beginnings Drive.
Yep.
Oh, I like that. That's awesome. Have I been there?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah.
What time?
But I will be.
4 p.m.?
4 p.m.
4 p.m.
4 p.m. Okay, if you want information, just contact us at the meetingspace.com, or you can go to Tin High's website,
TinHighLasVegas.info.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you guys so much, and thank you for joining us today on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and gracious host, PHLV Radio, here in Las Vegas. See you next week.